Welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since I posted a video, and today I just wanted to do, I guess you'd call it a small chore for one of my GitHub repositories. As you can see, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the README, I recently had a paper accepted covering basically all of the code I've been writing for research for the past few years. Before too long, hopefully you'll be able to access the paper and actually read it if you're curious. But for now, I just want to add some CI to this repository. Now, I was inspired to do this by John Hu's great video on this exact topic. So if you want a longer explanation, go check this out. And you can also check out his CI configuration repository, which is where I took most of the files I'm about to add to mine. Now, I've already done this for a couple of my repositories, especially this one called intder. So that's actually where I'm going to be starting today. But I wanted to make a quick video just going through that process so that you could see it as well. So today I'm just going to stick with Vim, hopefully, and I'll just hop over to my Rust pbqff repository. So you'll see I can do ls-a, and I currently have no .github file. So as a first approximation, I'm just going to go to my intder file, and I'll just copy the whole .github file over. Just copy it here, ls-a again, and if I look inside of this GitHub folder, you'll see we've got dependabot.yaml, and we've also got this workflows folder. If we look first at dependabot, this one's pretty straightforward. So we're just doing GitHub actions in the root directory of the repo. We're going to do this every day, and for cargo we're going to, I think it basically runs cargo update or something like that. Now if I were to actually do that right now, probably we would already get some updates, so that'll be a good way to test out the dependabot stuff. If we look in here again, we've also got two workflows. The first one is called check.yaml, and you'll see here I took this pretty much directly from John's repository. And what this is going to run, at least my understanding, is that it'll spin up an Ubuntu virtual machine. It's going to use nightly Rust, because that's what I usually develop on. And it'll get this from dtoolnay's Rust toolchain nightly. And it's going to run rust funct, okay, cargo funct check all. So basically it's just checking that we actually formatted all of our code, which is nice. I usually include cargo funct as a git pre-commit hook, but as I've found out, pre-commit hooks don't actually move with your repository. So if I forget to add a pre-commit hook on one of my machines that I develop on, when I try to push it off to GitHub, I will get an email about this failing CI. The other thing it's going to do is run Clippy, which is also great. I usually, of course, I try to push code that passes Clippy, but this will double check that for me, and it will also run cargo doc. Now, as many of you might have seen, I don't actually keep my documentation up to date all the time, so that one is unlikely to fail for me. But if you have stuff like doc tests or example code, I think that will be important to run. And again, workflow, the other thing is to actually run our tests. So if we look down here, sure, I don't really know what this stuff means, but it looks like it just has some permissions and stuff like that. Again, we're running on Ubuntu. I think this matrix toolchain lets you select multiple toolchains. So if you want to make sure that it compiles on stable Rust, beta Rust, and or nightly, then you can go ahead and fill those in here, and it'll run them on each one. For me, I really only care about nightly, and especially in this intder repository, you can see I actually have a Rust toolchain that requires a nightly channel. So I actually only care about nightly most of the time. After that, it's going to install the Rust toolchain again, and it's just going to run cargo test -- locked. It does, of course, check first if you don't have a lock file. It'll generate the lock file and then run the test locked. Now, if we look over at the make file for Rust pbqff, you'll see that I actually have some flags. So in this case, if you pass the short environment variable, or I've set it to 1, I guess, If you set it to 1, it only runs the short stuff. And it will, if it's still at 0, it adds the include ignored flag. So what I've done in this repository is I have some tests that are really slow to run, and they're slow to run because they actually run quantum chemistry computations that require me to have a program called Mopac installed on my local machine. So fortunately I already have those tests gated behind this, the ignored thing. So hopefully these will actually run. Now, from looking at these files now, I think this is ready to push off, and then we'll give CI the first chance to run. While that's happening, I'll go ahead and pause the video, and if something goes wrong, we will reconvene after that. Just in case you haven't seen this before, after I do that push, you'll see that I now have this little icon here, and this means that the checks are running. So I guess dependabot actually ran already, and the other tests or the other components of our CI are still running. All changes look good. So I did have some trouble recently with another one of my packages. Dependabot didn't seem to be picking up changes to the dependencies, so we'll see how that goes here. It works very well for intder. I've been getting a steady stream of pull requests from dependabot. You can see 15 of them, which is, I guess, what we're going for. So while the rest of the CI runs, alright, the formatting already finished, but while this other stuff runs, especially the tests, again, I'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, in the few seconds since I did the last pause, I've gotten 5 pull requests from dependabot. So we need to bump surd, we can bump my spectro, that one we can definitely do. We can also bump get2, we can bump surd JSON, and bump toml, a long way actually. So this is great, we're already getting benefits from running dependabot. And what would be really nice actually is if we could let these checks run. Now the issue is that it opened all of these at one time, and it looks like our test just failed. So we opened all of this at one time, and dependabot is, I think, going to run all of these tests. Yeah, let's see what went wrong in our test. Test failed. Build points failed. Not yet implemented. Okay, so I'm going to have to set up Emacs and take a look at that. Okay, so I've opened up Emacs to the offending test. Now, taking a quick look at this test, I see a few things that are slightly disastrous, or at least a bit embarrassing. So first of all, in this test for building points, I'm actually running an optimization on a geometry, basically for no reason. The essential part of the test, as you'll see here, is to check that I didn't break the symmetry code I have. So what we're checking here is that the number of points that get built based on a certain geometry agrees with what I calculated before. So the way that this would break is if I do some kind of adjustment to the symmetry detection code that produces a different number of points. So basically it doesn't consider two geometries that are symmetry equivalent, or the opposite. So it considers too many things symmetry equivalent. So really all I need to pass in here is this geometry that comes out of this part. So I shouldn't be running this part in the first place. And the second thing is this part here. While we're at it, make sure that this struct is serializable and deserializable. I'm pretty sure what I'm doing here is basically a round trip on the surd stuff. So it seems pretty obvious to me in hindsight that that should be a completely separate test. So I will plan to fix both of those things probably tomorrow. But for now, I'm just going to take the code action to ignore the test and push this off to GitHub. Okay, with that change made, we'll use maggot this time to actually commit our change, and I can push this off. And back to GitHub. So one thing that you should do when you're doing stuff like this is that you may actually want to stop some of these runs. Okay, so it looks like they actually all failed while I was working on the other stuff, but in principle I probably should have opened these and canceled the runs before letting them all run to completion. So basically I was just wasting resources. So sorry GitHub. But again, we'll see if these tests pass, and if not, I will resume the video one more time. Okay, you'll see now that our tests actually passed, and we can start tackling these pull requests. I probably won't include these in the video, but the one thing I did want to show is that you can re-trigger these tests. I think if I go to details, I can rerun failed jobs. So just to make sure that this pull request passes, now that I fixed the other issues, yeah, so that's my bad. What I actually should have done is type this, dependabot rebase. Because we made these other changes, we want dependabot to rebase, and then it'll automatically run the checks again. So that's the best way to go ahead and make sure that these other PRs are actually good to go. And once I do this, I'm not going to hit merge pull request, I'm going to hit squash and merge. That way I'll just get a commit directly from dependabot rather than having two commits, the dependabot one and merging into master. But that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. You can monitor the repository if you're really curious to see how the rest of this goes. But otherwise, I'm just going to sit here, let the CI run, and then start merging these pull requests from dependabot. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.